Hi, good morning everyone. Let's get started with our next topic in this particular training session. So basically what we are trying to do here is we are going to go to the upgrade interface. So we have started the daemon and now I am going to a default port for the upgrade interface, which is 4239. So when we give this particular URL, that is hostname colon 4239, a software upgrade manager will start. So you can see that the software upgrade manager has started. You need to provide the username and password and you can select the role. There are two roles. One is administrator that you can see here, and in case if other people wants to see what is going on, they can log in with the mode as observer. So let's here you can see the different phases: initialization phase, extraction phase, configuration phase, checks phase, pre-processing phase, execution phase, post-processing phase. So then you have the finalization phase. So basically here you can see that in the initialization phase we have given the information about the username passwords. Now we are at the extraction phase. Here it is asking for the information about the DDIC password. So we will provide the information about the DDIC password, that is what is the DDIC password for this. Now after giving the DDIC password user, what we will do is we will provide the information about the OS specific password. We'll provide the information about the DB password. So basically once we provide all that information, we will just click on the continue tab so that it gets to the next input screen. So just make note that the password that is required is in the client 000 and the user in that client is DDIC user. Make sure that that user is a dialog user and you are able to log in to client 00 using that particular username and password, and ensure that you have your own user created in client 00 as well. Okay, then lastly was the system user. So basically you should have the database system user password as well. So just validate all these three passwords, that is the DDIC password in client 00, the system password for the database, and the OS password for the CDDM. So you should validate all these passwords just to make sure that you are able to log in and execute these things in the system. So right now we are in the extraction phase. In the extraction phase you can see what is taking place in the system. It is trying to extract everything into the EPS in folder. So this particular phase takes a lot of time, especially the pre-scan dir. It will scan the inbox and it will try to update the information into the folder for the upgrade. So basically these are pre-upgrade checks, and these checks can be performed anytime before the upgrade or anytime we can run this checks, and we have an option to reset as well. So at any point of time we feel that the information is not correct, we need to start our upgrade again, we can run the reset as well. So that is pretty handy feature, especially during the preparation phase, during the extraction phase, during the configuration phase, during the checks phase. So it's pretty easy to reset before the pre-processing phase. So that is extremely important, just to make sure that you are aware of what is possible. Say for example, if we run into any critical issues and if that requires a lot of changes, just to make sure that these things can be read by the upgrade tool, so that the inputs are incorporated within the upgrade tool. Because what happens is that during the initialization phase, during the extraction phase, it creates the information in the upgrade folder about all the inputs that has been provided so far. So in case if any changes takes place, we should make sure that we are able to reset the things, we are able to go to the previous phases, so that all the changes which is incorporated can be reflected properly in the upgrade folder. That is extremely important, otherwise we may be facing issues during the upgrade. And one more thing pretty important is about the kernel. So just make sure that the kernel is upgraded before we start the upgrade, because in case if you upgrade the kernel during the middle of the upgrade or during after the pre-processing is complete and you try to upgrade the kernel, it throws a lot of errors. It throws so much of errors, it will be difficult to make it out what is going on in the upgrade. So that is extremely important that when we are starting the upgrade, before you reach your pre-processing phase, in fact before you start your upgrade process itself, before you get into the initialization screen, just make sure that you change your kernel, you make sure that you upgrade your kernel, you upgrade your kernel folder, you upgrade the kernel as well as the exe folder for the kernel. So both the folders should be upgraded and both should be in sync, so that the upgrade becomes pretty smooth if we are able to upgrade the kernel beforehand. It is possible to upgrade it afterward also, just to make sure that there is no downtime, but as much as possible try to organize a downtime 1 week or few weeks, 1 week at least before, so that you know what the upgrade tool that is there, the kernel which is there is updated and it has the right information. It can run through the different upgrade steps seamlessly. So that is extremely important. So just make sure that we are able to execute that in time. So later we'll go through what takes place in the what all happens in the extraction phase. You can see different extraction phases here. We can run through the details about each extraction phase, so but that is not so important because there are hundreds and thousands of phases that we will be going through during the upgrade process. So most important thing is we will see which phases are extremely important. Okay, so which are the key phases, which are the phases which is say data collection phase, kernel related phase, import related phase, import of database dictionary related phase, so downtime related phases. So we need to identify, we should know which phases are extremely important, and we need to make sure that we are taking or we are giving right focus to the critical phases, especially the upgrade related phases, especially the import related phases, because those phases are key phases. During those phases the upgrade tool interacts with the OS, with the database, with the SAP layer. So during the checks phase itself, all the checks are performed so that anything goes wrong, it can be corrected in time before it becomes too late. Okay, so you can see that the scan dir underscore EPS0 took a lot of time. Now it gets to the next phase where we check the spam version. Basically it checks whether the spam version is correct or not. Basically here you can see that it is asking the information about the version of the spam. So basically here we need to give the right spam version, that is we need to make sure that before we start the upgrade we complete the spam update, otherwise we need to get at this stage and then select and upgrade the spam. So both way it is feasible, but that it's more advisable to do it during the upgrade, during the phase before we are starting the upgrade, so that we have enough time to take care of all these activities. Okay, now in this particular case what you can see is what is happening is that it is copying the original kernel to $put path/exe. So basically it is copying the kernel into the exe folder, okay, which is there in the some location that is created for the shadow instance. So that part is taken care. So basically here you can see that things like new kernel is downloaded. Here the new kernel is getting extracted. So basically you saw that during these checks phase, during this extraction phases, the most key activity what is happening is the extraction of the software packages that we have downloaded. It's extraction of the kernel that we have kept in the download folder. So that particular extraction, so these are some of the key phases actually which takes a lot of time, like the activities that is taking place. So that's where we need to be patient, because these phases which may take few hours, if for example during upgrade there are phases which may take up to 24 hours or so. So we have to be very patient during these phases, but we should know which phases is going to take time. Okay, now here you can see that there is some error message which has come, that is the password for system doesn't work. So we need to log into the system, we need to log in to the system as SQL plus user and log in with the user ID as system and validate its password. Once the password is correct and validated correctly, then we need to put that password here and continue, that is we need to move forward from there. So that's how the inputs that we have given previously during the initialization phase, during the initial of extraction phases, so those inputs are validated step by step during the extraction phase, during the configuration phase, during the checks phase, till the time we enter into pre-processing and the execution phase. So basically all these inputs like system parameter, system password, the shadow instance will connect to the existing system using this particular password, and it will fetch the information, it will create the objects based on whatever is required to be created. So after entering the correct password, you can see that this upgrade has started moving forward. Okay, so that is basically the thing, and here you can see that there is another password which is required, that is called the SID ADM password. SID ADM password is actually the system identification number. Say, as we know in SAP Word, for every system you should have a SID. So this is the SID ADM password, which is one key parameter or key input which is required specially from the logging into the system with SID ADM, as the privilege of SID ADM will be applied. So this particular program will connect and execute at OS level using the SID ADM privileges. So what we have seen at OS level, it is SID ADM, at database level it is DDKIN client 00, and at the SQL level it is the system password. So these are three key passwords which we should make sure that we have correct, we should validate, we should connect to the system and make sure that we have the validated and updated information about these passwords. So depending on these inputs, the extraction phase and the preparation and the checks configuration phase will be taking place. So that is about the extraction phase. You can see that right now what is happening is it is resolving the inconsistencies in the TABARD dash tab space mapping. So it is validating if there is any inconsistency in the tab state in that mapping, and it will fix those particular issues. So here you can see that these are the different preparation phases. It will check each and every parameter, it will check each and every table space, and inconsistencies at various layers will be checked, and it will check for the inactive objects as well. It will check for the objects which are not released, it will check for the upgrade tools basically. So in the preparation phase, here you can see that all these are preparation phases, and these are mainly the checks. You can see there is a space check is being performed. You can see ABAP dictionary preparation is being done right now. So these checks, they are important because based on the check, if check goes through successfully without any problem, that means you will not face any problem during your major upgrade phases like pre-processing phase and especially in the downtime phase. So just make sure that if we encounter any error, we make sure that we fix them right in time, and if required, if we need to reset the upgrade, just make sure that we are resetting the upgrade as well, because the activities afterward depends on what we are performing right now. All the preparation phases, all the validation phases, all the checks phases. So especially it's extremely important that the preparation phase is smooth. We should streamline this particular process, especially the preparation phase, so that all the preparation activities is identified and streamlined upfront before we get into the upgrade in each and every system. So during the upgrade we don't encounter any major issues. So that is actually a process. We cannot identify and fix everything in the first system before we can get into the upgrade. But once we start the upgrade of the first system, that is where we need to make sure that we follow the upgrade guide in detail, and based from the upgrade guide we prepare a list of preparation checks. We make sure that the necessary notes which need to be applied is taken care. We need to make sure that the transports which is there in the system is not in the state of, basically there are no locked objects in the transport. So just we need to make sure that we either delete those objects or we release those transports so that there are no such locked objects, because during the upgrade what will happen is that the objects will be updated, it will be upgraded to a newer version which is coming with the upgrade software. So if you have those objects in the locked state, those objects may not be overwritten, it will be difficult to override those objects. Okay, now as we discussed that there are some notes which need to be applied as well. So you can see these are the two notes which has come up for application. So we need to go to S note in the system and apply these notes. So once these notes are applied, either we can get them transported out to the subsequent system. Even if these notes are, you can see the status as obsolete or cannot be implemented, but we should run them so that it captures the information that yes, this note is there but it cannot be implemented, or this is an obsolete note. So, and whatever nodes can be implemented, we need to go to S node, download it and implement that node before we can come back to this screen and click on continue. So that is our next step. So what we are doing is we are connecting to the system and applying these nodes into the system. So that is our next step, and that can be performed while logging into the system. So we are logging into the system and we are going to perform this particular exercise of applying these nodes into the system. So we are connecting to the system, and as these nodes need to be applied with a user other than DDIC or SAP star user, because these users, we should not apply the nodes using these users because we cannot transport out things or the validation doesn't work properly for these users. So we should make sure that these users are not used during the node application. So that is extremely important, because otherwise it will give the message that you will be able to download these nodes. While applying the nodes, it may not continue further. So we are in the S node screen where you can see there are different nodes, but we'll go into the screen from which we can download the nodes. Okay, so here what I am trying to do here is I am trying to look for these nodes and see if this node is already there in the system or not. So I am going to a screen where I can download. So here in this screen I can download the node. So I'll just need to, this is basically the node assistant. I'll just copy paste that particular node, whatever is thrown by this upgrades software update manager, put it in the S node, and we can give all the nodes at one shot, or we can just do one by one. So in this particular screen you can see that I'm trying to copying all the nodes in this particular interface. So all the nodes will get copied at one shot, and once they are downloaded we can apply those nodes directly. So to execute this node, just click on the watch screen over there in this screen, and you can see at the bottom the SAP node number, that is 1523714, is being downloaded. So what happens is that this system tries to connect to SAP marketplace and directly download these nodes into your system. So just make sure that the firewall, the router is up, because it goes via the router to connect to the SAP marketplace for downloading these nodes. So that is extremely important. Otherwise what will happen is that it may not be able to connect and the download or the connection will fail. So we won't be able to move forward with the downloading or the application of these nodes into the system. So as a step one, what we are doing here is we are downloading the node. So this may take some time depending on how big that particular note is. Notes are actually the small corrections which is released to fix a particular issue. So once these notes are applied, whatever is identified by the system, by the upgrade tool, by the software update manager tool, and we can move forward with the upgrade. So at this stage is the download stage where we are downloading these notes. So give us few seconds, and once this download is complete we can continue. So we have downloaded say 2 notes, but only one of them you can see is with this particular symbol as arrow symbol with blue. So only this can be implemented in the system. The other note is an obsolete note which cannot be implemented in the system. So we just saw that even we downloaded 2 notes, only one is seen as which can be implemented, other may be obsolete note. So once I click on that particular arrow symbol, you will come to this screen and click on this watch symbol. So while clicking on this watch symbols, here you can see that here it will give some information that they want to continue. Some message will come that make foreign repairs only if they are urgent. So we are trying to do a foreign namespace repair, and we need to make sure that the client is open. So how do we open the client? How do we make sure that the client is open? We need to go to SCC4 to check the changes are allowed. In this screen you can see that there are no changes allowed. Okay, so this change we may not be able to move forward with the application of nodes. So we need to make sure that we allow the changes. So this is where we control the changes in the system. Here you can see that option is it was no changes allowed. We change it to automatic recording of changes. Okay, now let's go to AC06, and in AC06 we can go to the system change option, and we need to make sure that it is set to modifiable. So this is how we open and close the clients in the system. Now the client is open, so we'll just click on this arrow symbol. Here it is asking for a transport number. So basically what I am doing is I will create a transport request, and that request will be created in the system so that it can be subsequently transported out from this system into subsequent system, so that we are not opening these clients in production or quality systems. So here you can see that what object is getting modified and which objects will be changed by this particular note. So with which user we have downloaded the note, and you can see that this note is implemented now. And once this is implemented, you can see that green arrow symbol there. So that means that the note has been applied successfully. So we will go back to our upgrade screen and click on continue symbol. So once we click on continue symbol, here you can see that this first phase is completed with the extraction phase, and at every extraction phase completion you will get this type of screen telling if there is any manual action required, that is, are there any errors which need to be fixed before you can go to the next phase, and if there is any information which need to be passed on. Here you can see some information is there, that is spam version is 47 in your system, which is still 47. Okay, now we click on next so that we can get into the configuration phase. In the configuration phase you can see this is very important, because here we define the number of dialog work processes and background work process, and in case if we need to keep the archiving on during the whole process, you can select these options. So the moment we click continue, it will be asking the advanced options, basically how many work process, how many background process, how many R3 load process you want to be running in the system during an upgrade. So it's very important that we tune these parameters, we modify these parameters in the system so that we can run our actual system, because this is uptime phase. So we should be able to run our system during uptime as well as during downtime with the required number of work process, so that we optimally utilize the system. You can see there are separate parameters for uptime, separate parameter for downtime. So we should be very careful with the upgrade uptime activity, because we should not be impacting our business. And secondly, during downtime we should be very careful, because these parameters will govern the speed with which the upgrade will happen. So that is extremely important. And next thing is about the ICNV, and if we want to modify or we want to factor those tables which are using incremental migration, so we can add those tables. And here you can see SGen process also, we can tune the SGen process as well to make the SGen faster. So SGen is like when the upgrade is done, when we have new objects in the system, we need to compile those objects. So that compilation process, that is how many processes we would like to be running in parallel for that compilation, for the generation of the programs, before we can start running or carrying out activities in our SGen system, in the shadow system, and during the downtime phase during our actual system. Okay, so that is extremely important. Okay, so various cleanup is starting here. We can see that, okay, after that what is happening is the host agent is checked. Okay, now the information about the SAP host agent. So we have an option to skip the SAP host agent, and we need to specify the SAP ADM password in case if we are going ahead with the installation of SAP host agent. So this is also pretty important, especially right now in all the systems the solution manager is installed, the agents are installed, and all the systems are connected to SAP solution manager. And SAP host agent, what it does is that it basically sends the system specific information to the solution manager, and if we create or install the diagnostic agent, it will send all the information about the agent, about the system, the SID, and that will help to maintain that particular system. Okay, so it is pretty useful from the perspective of creating the system into LMDB, that is from 7.1 onwards it is LMDB. Okay, so just make sure that we make a right decision for SAP host agent, depending on if it is part of solution manager, how we want to send that information, the monitoring data, the reporting data into solution manager. So that is pretty important. Okay, right now the phase we are in is enhancement package inclusion. This phase actually takes a lot of time. This can run into few hours. It could run into say 5 to 6 hours or even more, depending on the system capacity, the capacity with which the system is running, how many processes or memory is there in that particular system. So that this particular phase is one of the major phase in the configuration, and which can take huge amount of time. Okay, so that is about the EHP inclusion phase. So in this particular phase, these components are added in the user's SAP trans folder, and they are reflected into our normal spam or saint list, so that we can see those queues, because we need to include the queues before we can apply them into the system. And at this phase, the inclusion, that is the definition of the queue, is defined, and EHP inclusion right now is running, so let it take some time. Okay, so basically we can come back to this screen, and in the meantime it is running. I would like to give you guys a brief overview about the configuration that is taking place. Okay, one of the key thing that is coming up is the is select phase. So what happens in the is select phase is we will be seeing what are the add-on packages are there. We need to make a call about the different add-on packages. We need to find out what add-on packages are there. What do we want to do with the add-on packages? Do we want to include them? Do we want to upgrade them? Do we not to keep the version as it is? And can we skip them? Can we delete them? So all that decision making takes place in this particular phase. So it is extremely important, because that decides the addition of add-ons, that is the strategy for add-ons, that is, can we keep it? So there are a couple of questions, and we need to make sure that we read upgrade guide and the notes properly for the add-ons, because add-ons are extremely important, because those add-ons are providing functionality to the SAP system, and we need to make sure that we have the right add-on selected, right add-on strategy in place. We need to make sure that we are reading the relevant notes for that particular respective add-on, and we decide if the add-on need to be upgraded or not. Can it be upgraded afterward? Can we keep the same version of add-on to make it simple? And in case if there are some obsolete add-ons which are there in the system, which is installed for some reason, is not in use, so those can be deleted at this particular stage, because we can say, okay, these add-ons we would like to delete it. There are few add-ons which may need to keep the version, so we want to keep those versions for those add-ons. There could be some add-ons which we want to upgrade using the Saint CDs. Okay, so we need to decide that which add-ons we want to upgrade using the Saint CDs or the DVDs. And there could be few add-ons for which we already have the software in the APS in folder, and we would like to use those APS in folder to add the add-ons. So basically, if the add-ons is not selected properly and if we need to revisit them, we should spend some time, or basically enough time, just to make sure that we decide the right strategy for the add-on, because that is extremely important. Otherwise, what will happen is that we may end up in screwing up the add-on, which is extremely important, because that will govern the functionality. So your system may be providing a particular functionality, and if we don't have the right add-on strategy in place, if we don't have the right version of the add-on after the upgrade, it may be a problem. We may not run all the programs properly, we may not get the right functionality properly, and once that particular thing is taken care, it will help the upgrade, it will help the people who is using those add-ons, so that they don't face the issues after the system is upgraded. So just make sure that we have the right strategy in place for the add-ons. Okay, right now you can see that the enhancement package inclusion phase is still running. So this phase, as I mentioned, is that it could take up to 5 to 10 hours depending on the capacity of your CPUs and processors in the system, which means that you need to be patient. And second thing is, you need to make sure that you log into the log folder. Say for example, you have your sum extracted in say D drive, so you need to go to this folder called d:/sum/abap/log folder, and you can click on the modified and see the files which is being written. You need to find out that whether there are any changes in the file, for how long there are no changes in the file. So you need to make sure that the system is doing some activity on it. So what happens is that if there are processes which can take hours and hours and hours of time, it becomes very difficult to make it out if any activity is happening in the system. So we need to log into the system. We need to find it out exactly what is taking place in the system. It could be at the log file level. It could be in the job in SM37. We may need to go depending on what type of activity, what type of job is running. We may need to see the process in SM66, see if any process is running in the shadow instance, especially in this particular case, or we may need to go to the, if it is a downtime phase, we may need to find out if any activity is taking place, because there are programs like act_upg, act_upgrade, which can run up to 22 to 24 hours depending on the system resources which have been allocated to the upgrade process. So it is extremely important, and we should know, and later once the upgrade is done, what we should do is we should take and find out the time for each phase, exactly how much time each phase takes, and we need to list down the phases which takes maximum amount of time, because they will be of key concern, which is the area where you can do some tuning, which are the area which you need to list it down in your upgrade document, that this particular phase is taking so much of time, so that when you are performing an upgrade for your subsequent systems, you have the information upfront that these are the phases which takes this much amount of time, especially phases which takes more than an hour or so, more than couple of hours. We should list it down in our steps list, in our task list, in our screenshots that we are taking for the upgrade, so that we know that this is the phase which is going to take this much of time, and we should figure it out a way to validate, to check if any activity is being performed at that particular phase or not. So that is extremely important. That is, identify the phases, identify all the phases which takes say more than few hours of time, and come up with a strategy to validate if there is anything happening at that particular phase, and list it down that where to check for a particular phase. Say for example, if the phase is EHP underscore inclusion, so we can go and check in the log folder to see if there are log files being written for it. Say if there is any other phase, say for example things like act underscore UPG, which will be in pre-processing phase, you can list it down that you need to go to SM66, or you need to go to things like job SM37 to find out the jobs which are running in the system, to see what is being done by those jobs. Are there any spools there in the system? And we need to check if there are there is some activity in the system by this particular process, because it may happen that there are cases, it may happen that the process is running for hours and hours and it's not doing anything. It may be waiting for something. So it is extremely important that we identify those phases, we come up with a strategy, we come up with a way to validate what is being done in that particular phase. And once that part is done, it becomes quite straightforward that we can say, okay, this phase is running and these are the phases which takes this much amount of time, and to find out if anything is being done in that particular phase, we can go to this log file, we can find it out, okay, what is taking place, what is happening in this phase, and based on that, at least we need to be very sure on what is taking place in those particular phases which takes a lot of time, because the time is most important in the upgrade process. We may not have luxury of a lot of time, especially if we end up in wasting say 24 hours in the say phases like act underscore UPG. We may need to rerun it, or if we come to know only after a few hours, 10, 20 or 25 hours, if we come to know, we would have wasted a lot of time and our upgrade may get impacted, and we may not have luxury, especially during the upgrades of production systems. We may not have that luxury. So we should figure out a way to validate all that. So that is extremely important. Okay, so right now we are still in this particular phase, which is enhancement package inclusion. So in this phase, what happens is all the packages related to EHP inclusion, which is added into your users SAP trans folder, and with the queue is created, those packages are deleted. Okay, so that's what happens in this particular phase. Alright, then that's what actually I wanted to cover in this particular session. Thank you for joining and have a nice day. Bye bye.